Quick guess. What's the most commonly used pain reliever in America? If you said ibuprofen, you're wrong, and so was I, until I looked at the actual numbers. It's acetaminophen, better known by its most famous brand name, Tylenol. Roughly 52 million Americans use it in a given week, more than any other single pain reliever, prescription or over-the-counter. Here's what makes that genuinely interesting. Acetaminophen doesn't work anything like ibuprofen does. It doesn't really touch inflammation. Scientists still don't fully agree on its exact mechanism in the brain, and it has a single, very specific failure point that makes it gram for gram one of the most dangerous common household medications in America. Not because it's poorly made, but because of one number most people have never actually checked on the label. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how the most used pain reliever in the country works, why it's not just gentler ibuprofen, and the one number worth knowing before you ever take it again. Quick note before we dive in. I'm not a doctor, and nothing here is medical advice. This is research, not a prescription. If you have questions about your own medication use, dosing, or liver health, talk to a doctor or pharmacist about your specific situation. Let's start with what acetaminophen isn't. It's not an NSAID. Ibuprofen, aspirin, and naproxen are all non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. They work by blocking enzymes called COX-1 and COX-2, which reduces inflammation throughout your body. Acetaminophen doesn't meaningfully do that. It's classified as an analgesic and antipyretic, a pain reliever and fever reducer, but it has little to no real anti-inflammatory effect. Here's the part that genuinely surprises people, including plenty of clinicians. Scientists still don't have complete agreement on exactly how acetaminophen relieves pain. The leading theory involves it crossing into the brain and acting on pain and temperature pathways in the central nervous system, potentially involving cyclooxygenase inhibition, specifically within the brain rather than throughout the body, along with effects on serotonin pathways. It's one of the most widely used drugs on Earth, and we're still filling in the exact mechanism. So if it's not attacking inflammation like ibuprofen, and even scientists aren't 100% certain how it kills pain, why did it become the single most used pain reliever in the entire country? The answer starts with where it goes the moment you swallow it. Once swallowed, acetaminophen moves through your esophagus into your stomach, where it begins dissolving, then continues into your small intestine, which is where the majority of it actually gets absorbed into your bloodstream, typically within 30 to 60 minutes, depending on what else is in your stomach at the time. From there, blood carrying the drug flows directly to one organ that does almost all the real work in this story, your liver. This is where acetaminophen fundamentally splits into two very different stories depending on the dose. One boring and safe, one that becomes one of the most common causes of a specific, serious medical emergency in the entire country. Here's where it gets genuinely interesting. At a normal dose, your liver handles acetaminophen almost effortlessly, but there's a tiny side pathway your liver also uses, one that produces a byproduct so reactive it can start destroying liver cells directly. And the only thing standing between completely fine and medical emergency is a chemical your body has a surprisingly limited supply of. At a normal recommended dose, your liver processes the vast majority of acetaminophen through two safe, boring pathways: conjugation with glucuronide and sulfate, essentially packaging the drug for harmless excretion through your kidneys and out in your urine. No drama, no damage. But a small fraction, even at normal doses, gets routed to a different pathway, involving an enzyme called CYP2E1, which converts it into a reactive, genuinely toxic byproduct called NAPQI. Under normal conditions, this isn't a problem, because your liver has a natural detox chemical called glutathione that immediately neutralizes NAPQI, converting it into something harmless that also gets excreted safely. Here's the catch. Your glutathione supply isn't unlimited. At normal doses, you have plenty to spare, but push the total acetaminophen dose high enough, through a single large overdose or repeatedly taking more than the recommended amount over several days, and your glutathione reserves start running low. Once they're depleted by roughly 70%, there's no longer enough left to neutralize incoming NAPQI. At that point, NAPQI starts directly binding to liver cells and killing them. This isn't a rare theoretical risk. Acetaminophen overdose is currently the leading cause of acute liver failure in the United States, responsible for close to half of all acute liver failure cases in the country. And here's the part that should genuinely concern you. The amount separating completely safe from dangerous is a lot closer than most people assume, especially once you factor in something most people don't even think to check. Most people picture an acetaminophen overdose as someone intentionally taking a huge handful of pills. In reality, a significant number of cases happen accidentally, and here's exactly why. Acetaminophen is an ingredient in more than 600 different products, not just standalone Tylenol, but combination cold medicines, sleep aids, sinus medications, and prescription opioid combinations like Percocet and Vicodin. That means someone can take their regular dose of Tylenol for a headache, then take a nighttime cold medicine a few hours later without realizing it also contains acetaminophen, then maybe a sinus medication on top of that, and cross the daily safety ceiling without ever taking what felt like too much of any single product. The generally recognized maximum is 4,000 milligrams in 24 hours for a healthy adult, though many clinicians and pharmacists now recommend staying under 3,000 milligrams as a more conservative everyday ceiling, especially with regular, ongoing use rather than occasional use. For context, that's roughly 8 to 12 regular strength tablets, depending on the product, a number that's genuinely easy to approach if you're combining multiple products without checking each one's active ingredients. So what does this actually mean for how you should use it day to day? This is where the honest, practical part of this video actually lives. Not fear, just the specific numbers and habits that keep this genuinely useful medication safe. First, check every label every time for the word acetaminophen or APAP, not just the products you'd obviously call pain relievers. Cold and flu medicine, sleep aids, and prescription painkillers frequently contain it, and the active ingredient is what matters, not the brand name on the box. Second, track your total daily amount across everything you take, not per product. If you take Tylenol for a headache and a nighttime cold medicine later, add the acetaminophen from both together against that 3,000 to 4,000 milligram ceiling. Don't treat each product as starting from zero. Third, alcohol changes the calculation, but maybe not in the direction you'd assume. Acute alcohol intake alongside acetaminophen may modestly reduce NAPQI production, since alcohol and acetaminophen compete for the same liver enzyme. But chronic heavy alcohol use is a different story. It depletes baseline glutathione reserves and increases the CYP2E1 enzyme pathway, meaningfully raising risk with repeated supertherapeutic dosing over time. The honest takeaway: if you drink regularly, that's a real conversation worth having with a doctor or pharmacist about your personal safe ceiling. Fourth, and worth genuine reassurance here, at normal recommended doses, acetaminophen remains one of the best studied, safest common medications available. This isn't a video telling you to fear your medicine cabinet. The risk here is specifically about dose and stacking multiple products, not about the drug being secretly dangerous at normal use. So here's the actual picture. The most used pain reliever in America works through a completely different mechanism than ibuprofen, remains genuinely safe at normal doses, and has exactly one real vulnerability: a glutathione supply that isn't unlimited, and a safety ceiling that's easier to accidentally cross than most people realize, mostly because acetaminophen is hiding in more products than anyone checks. Next time you reach for a pain reliever, or a cold medicine, or a sleep aid, check the label for that one word. It takes 10 seconds, and it's the single most useful thing in this entire video. If this changed how you think about your medicine cabinet, subscribe. I break down what the science actually says. No fluff, no fear-mongering. See you in the next one.